The medical bay of the galactic cruiser Aegis didn't smell like a hospital. It smelled like incense and old dust. There was no humming of machines, no clicking of ventilators, and definitely no shouting. To the Solari people, death was a sacred, quiet bridge. When the heart stopped, you didn't fight it. You bowed your head, said a prayer, and let the soul drift into the great void. On the central levitation table lay Captain Keithon. He was a giant of a man, a four-armed warrior who had survived 100 battles. But today, a tiny piece of shrapnel from a space mine had done what an entire army couldn't. It had pierced his primary heart. The monitors, thin, elegant crystals that glowed with soft blue light, had stopped pulsing. The blue light faded into a dull, flat gray. "The light has departed," whispered the chief surgeon, a tall alien with skin like polished marble. He folded his 4 hands over his chest and closed his large, milky eyes. "Captain Keithon is now a memory. Let the silence begin." The other Zilari doctors stepped back from the table. They began to hum a low, haunting tune. To them, the captain was already gone. His body was just an empty shell, a biological suit that had run out of power. In their world, when the life spark went out, you didn't try to turn it back on. You just didn't. It was against the laws of nature. It was impossible. But then, the heavy blast doors of the med bay didn't just open, they were kicked. Bam! The sound echoed through the silent room like a gunshot. The Zilari doctors jumped, their prayers cutting off in mid-syllable. Human medic Sarah Miller burst into the room. She wasn't wearing ceremonial robes. She was wearing a grease-stained jumpsuit with a heavy medical pack slung over her shoulder. Her hair was a mess, tied back in a hurried ponytail, and she was breathing hard, like she'd just run 3 miles through the ship's ventilation shafts. She didn't bow. She didn't pray. She didn't even look at the grieving doctors. "Report," she barked, her voice cutting through the holy atmosphere like a chainsaw. The chief surgeon looked at her with pity. "Human Miller, you are late. The captain has joined the void. The switch has been flipped. His heart has been silent for 3 minutes. Please join us in the song of passing." Sarah didn't join the song. Instead, she dropped her heavy bag on the floor with a loud thud and rushed to the table. She grabbed the captain's cold, gray hand and felt for a pulse. 3 minutes, she muttered, her eyes darting to the gray crystals on the wall. 3 minutes is nothing. That's just a long nap. The aliens gasped. "A nap. His blood has stopped moving. He is cold." To touch the dead is to invite the void into yourself. Sarah ignored them. She reached into her bag and pulled out a pair of heavy, black gloves and a small handheld scanner. "Listen to me, marble skin," she said, looking the chief surgeon dead in the eye. "On my planet, we don't give up just because the lights went out. We check the breakers. We check the wiring. And we definitely don't start singing until I say so." She looked at the captain's gray face. He looked dead. He smelled dead. Any sane species in the galaxy would have started planning the funeral. But Sarah Miller wasn't thinking about a funeral. She was looking at his anatomy. She was thinking about oxygen levels, brain activity, and cellular decay. "You are desecrating a hero," another doctor cried out, stepping forward to stop her. "Let him go in peace." Sarah didn't even turn around. She just pointed a finger at him. "Stay back. I am a human medic. In my culture, death isn't a state of being. It's a technical malfunction. And I'm the lead technician on this ship." She turned back to the captain and slapped his face hard. Smack! The aliens nearly fainted. To strike a dead body was the ultimate sin. But Sarah didn't care about sins. She cared about the clock. Every second that passed, the captain's brain cells were starving. "Come on, Keithon," she hissed, her voice low and dangerous. "You owe me 20 credits from that poker game last week. You aren't dying until I get my money." She looked at the flat line on the monitor and yelled at the ceiling. "Not on my shift. Not today." To the Solari, this was madness. They saw a small, fragile creature screaming at the universe, trying to pick a fight with death itself. They thought she was crazy. They thought she was being cruel to a corpse. What they didn't realize was that humans are the only species in the known universe that views the end as a negotiation. To an alien, death was a wall. To Sarah Miller, it was just a door that had accidentally slammed shut, and she was about to kick it down. She reached into her bag and pulled out a device that looked like 2 heavy iron bricks connected by a thick, coiled wire. It hummed with a terrifying, low-frequency power. "Clear," she shouted. The aliens didn't know what "clear" meant, but the look in her eyes told them to run. They scrambled backward as Sarah Miller prepared to do the one thing the galaxy thought was impossible. She was going to hunt down a soul and drag it back by the throat. The medical bay was no longer a place of prayer. It had become a battlefield, and Sarah Miller was the only soldier left standing. "What are you doing?" The chief surgeon gasped, his forearms trembling in the air. "He is gone! His spirit has walked into the mists! Respect the transition, human! You are disturbing his peace!" Sarah didn't even blink. She didn't look up. Her hands were busy tearing at the captain's thick, ceremonial chest plate. The gold leaf armor, worth more than a small starship, was being tossed aside like trash. "I don't care about his peace," she grunted, her teeth clenched. "I care about his pulse. And right now, he doesn't have one." With a final violent tug, she ripped the armor open, exposing the captain's broad, gray chest. The Silari doctors recoiled. To them, the body was a temple that must remain untouched once the light went out. Sarah didn't see a temple. She saw a machine that had stalled. Then, she did something that made the aliens scream in genuine horror. Sarah climbed onto the high medical table. She straddled the captain's massive body, hovering over the dead commander. She locked her elbows, placed the heel of her hand in the center of his chest, and pushed. She pushed with her entire body weight, using every ounce of strength she had. The sound was like a dry branch snapping in a winter forest. It was loud, it was brutal. "No," the assistant surgeon shrieked, falling to his knees. "You broke him? You snapped the bone of a hero. This is a war crime? Guards, someone stop this madness." Sarah didn't stop. "Push. Release. Release." She was rhythmic, like a metronome. Sweat began to beat on her forehead, dripping onto the captain's cold skin. "I'm not breaking him," Sarah grunted between breaths, her face turning red from the effort. "I'm restarting the pump." "His heart is a muscle, you idiots! If it won't beat on its own, I'll beat it for him." To the Xalari, this was the definition of human savagery. They believed that when the heart stopped, the universe had spoken. You didn't argue with the universe. But here was this tiny human, literally trying to crush a dead man back to life. "Get the paddles," Sarah yelled, not looking away from the captain's face. The what?" the chief surgeon stammered. "The black box in my bag, the one with the yellow lightning bolt. Move, now." The chief surgeon, frozen by the sheer intensity in Sarah's eyes, reached into the bag. He pulled out the defibrillator. It was humming a low, angry vibration that felt like a trapped storm. Sarah grabbed the two metal handles, the thick, coiled wires snapping into place. "You are going to burn him," the alien cried. "That is lightning. You are using the weapon of the clouds on a corpse." "It's not a weapon," Sarah said, her voice dropping to a low, dangerous whisper. "It's a wake-up call." She rubbed the two metal plates together. "Where?" The machine pitched higher, a screaming sound that signaled it was fully charged. "Everyone back!" "Clear," Sarah shouted. The aliens didn't move fast enough. She didn't wait. She slammed the paddles onto the captain's chest. "Tiam!" A massive bolt of electricity surged through the captain's body. The blue sparks danced across his fur. His entire frame arched off the table, his muscles locking tight as 5,000 volts of pure energy screamed through his nervous system. The smell of sinned fur filled the air. His limbs flailed for a second before slamming back down onto the metal surface. The monitor remained a flat, gray line. "He is twice dead now," the chief surgeon wailed. "You have cooked his flesh and broken his bones. Have you no soul, human?" Sarah didn't answer. She was already charging the machine again. "We're clear." "Tiump!" The captain's body jumped again. This was black magic to the Solari. They saw a human trying to jump-start a soul with lightning, refusing to accept the natural order of the galaxy. They saw a woman who looked like she was trying to fight a ghost and win. Two security guards finally rushed into the room, their plasma rifles leveled at Sarah's head. "Step away from the body, human!" the lead guard roared. "You are under arrest for the desecration of a high officer." Sarah didn't even look at the guns. She didn't look at the guards. She looked at the chief surgeon, her eyes cold, hard, and focused. There was a fire in her gaze that was more terrifying than any plasma rifle. "If you touch me," she hissed, her voice vibrating with a strange, primal authority, "the chain is broken. If you pull me off this table, he stays dead forever. Is that what you want? Do you want to be the ones who stop me from bringing him back?" The guards hesitated. They looked at their captain. He was a mess, broken ribs, singed fur, and a human woman screaming at him to wake up. It looked like a nightmare. But then they looked at Sarah. She wasn't a murderer. She was a hunter. She was tracking the captain's soul through the darkness, and she wasn't coming back without him. "Stay back," the chief surgeon whispered to the guards, his voice shaking. Let her continue." Sarah nodded once. She didn't say thank you. There wasn't time. She reached into her kit and pulled out a long, silver cylinder. "Now get the adrenaline," she ordered. "The big needle. The one marked emergency only. We're going into the heart." The aliens watched in stunned silence. They had seen many things in the vastness of space, collapsing stars, ancient ruins, and terrifying predators. But they had never seen anything as terrifying as a human medic who refused to let a friend die. To the rest of the galaxy, death was a wall. To Sarah Miller, it was just a door that she was currently trying to kick down with a pair of boots and a heart full of stubborn, human spite. "Charge it again," she yelled. "We're not done yet." The atmosphere in the medical bay had shifted from a funeral to something far more primal. The Solari doctors watched, paralyzed, as Sarah Miller reached into the sterile depths of her bag and pulled out a silver cylinder. Inside was a long, thin, wicked-looking needle. It wasn't like their medicine. Their medicine used soft lasers to mend tissue or soothing mists to calm the nerves. This was a jagged piece of steel filled with a chemical so potent it was banned in 7 different star systems for natural properties. The liquid inside the glass was a violent, pulsing red adrenaline. "In the name of the ancestors, stop," the chief surgeon pleaded. "You have already broken his bones and scorched his fur. Do not pierce his heart with that fang of metal. You are treating him like a piece of meat." Sarah didn't even look up. Her eyes were fixed on the exact spot between the captain's 4th and 5th ribs. "I'm not treating him like meat," she muttered, her thumb hovering over the plunger. "I'm treating him like a fighter, and fighters don't go out in their sleep." With a sudden, sharp motion, she drove the needle deep. It didn't just slide in, it punched through the muscle. The alien staff collectively gasped, several of them falling to their knees. They had never seen such violence used in the name of healing. To the Solari, healing was a gentle art, a slow conversation between the doctor and the body. To humans, healing was a desperate, bloody street fight against the Grim Reaper. Sarah wasn't asking the captain to come back. She was dragging him back by the throat. She emptied the red fluid directly into the heart muscle and pulled the needle out with a hiss. 1, 3. "Come on, you old lizard," Sarah whispered, her voice a mix of a prayer and a threat. "Don't you dare quit on me. You still haven't told me the coordinates for that hidden trade station. Wake up." The room fell into a deathly silence. The only sound was the hum of the ship's engines and the heavy, ragged breathing of the human medic. For 5 minutes, nothing happened. The gray crystals on the wall, the Solari version of a heart monitor, remained dark and lifeless. A flat line, a straight road leading directly to the afterlife. But Sarah Miller was trying to build a U-turn on that road. She leaned down, tilted the captain's massive head back, and covered his mouth with hers. She began to force air from her own lungs into his. 1, 2, breathe. She climbed back onto his chest and began the compressions again. Push, push, push. "It has been too long," the assistant surgeon whispered, tears of blue light leaking from his eyes. "His brain is starved. His spirit has moved beyond the reach of any machine. You are holding onto a shadow, human. Humans don't let go of shadows." Sarah snapped, her face dripping with sweat, her muscles screaming in protest. "We are the species that lived on a planet that tried to kill us every single day. We don't care about too long. We don't care about impossible. We care about the result." 10 minutes passed, then 15. The Solari began to murmur among themselves. They saw this as a tragedy, a broken human who couldn't accept the reality of death. To them, Sarah was the one who was sick, caught in a delusion. The chief surgeon stepped forward, his hand reaching out to touch her shoulder. "Medic Miller, Sarah, it is over. You have fought well, but the void has won. Let us prepare him for the stars." Sarah didn't stop. Her hands were bruised now. Her jumpsuit was soaked. Her vision was starting to blur from the sheer physical exhaustion of trying to keep another person's blood moving with nothing but her own strength. "It's not over," she panted, her voice cracking. "I am the medic." THMP, she hit the captain's chest one last time. It wasn't a medical compression, it was a punch. A literal, closed fist strike born of pure, stubborn frustration, she screamed. And then, the impossible happened. A single, tiny blue spark flickered on the gray crystal monitor. Beep. The sound was so small, so quiet, that the Solari doctors didn't even realize what it was at first. They thought it was a glitch in the ship's power grid. But then it happened again. Beep. The chief surgeon's 4 eyes went wide. He scrambled toward the monitor, his hands trembling so hard he could barely touch the sensors. The spark. No, it cannot be. The light was extinguished. The path was closed. Beep, beep. The rhythm was fast. It was chaotic. It was the sound of a heart that had been shock-drugged and pounded into submission. But it was beating. The blue light on the wall began to glow, faint at first, then brighter and brighter, pulsing with the life of a warrior who had been pulled back from the very edge of the abyss. Sarah Miller stopped. She sat back on her heels on the medical table, her arms shaking, her breath coming in heavy gasps. She looked like she had just climbed a mountain. She watched the monitor with a tired, knowing smirk. See, she whispered to the stunned alien doctors. I told you, he's just a bit stubborn. But the aliens didn't look at the captain. They looked at Sarah. They looked at her with a new kind of fear, a holy kind of terror. They had spent their entire history believing that death was the ultimate, unbreakable law of the universe. They believed that when the great switch was flipped, no power in the galaxy could flip it back. They were wrong. They had forgotten to account for the most dangerous element in the galaxy, human stubbornness. You cheated, the chief surgeon whispered, his voice full of awe. You broke the rules of life and death. Sarah wiped the sweat and blood from her forehead with the back of her hand and climbed down from the table. She looked at her bruised hands and then at the captain, whose chest was now rising and falling on its own. We don't cheat, Sarah said, her voice finally steady. We just don't accept the first answer the universe gives us, especially when that answer is no. Suddenly, the captain's hand, the one Sarah had been holding earlier, twitched. His massive fingers curled into a fist. His eyes, though still closed, were moving under his eyelids. He was coming back. But as the monitor grew louder and the captain's body began to react to the massive dose of adrenaline in his system, a new problem arose. He wasn't just waking up. He was waking up in a deathworlder, state of fight or flight. Everyone get back, Sarah yelled, suddenly alert again. He's going to be disoriented. He thinks he's still in the explosion. The Xilari, who had been frozen in shock, finally moved. But they were too slow. The captain's eyes snapped open, not with the soft peace of a soul returned, but with the white, hot intensity of a man who had just crawled out of hell. The captain's eyes didn't just open, they exploded into life. He let out a gasp so deep and violent it sounded like a drowning man reaching the surface of the ocean. It was a wet, rattling sound that tore through the artificial silence of the medical bay. His forearms suddenly flailed, his massive claws scraping against the metal table as his body remembered how to exist. He was alive. The Xilari surgeons didn't cheer. They didn't clap. They backed away in pure, unadulterated terror, hitting the walls of the room with their backs. They looked at the captain as if he were a ghost made flesh, and then they looked at Sarah Miller as if she were a demon who had just committed a crime against the Creator. To them, what they were seeing wasn't a miracle. It was a violation. You pulled him back. The chief surgeon trembled, his marble-like skin turning a sickly shade of green. His four hands were shaking so hard he had to tuck them into his sleeves. You reached into the great beyond and snatched him back. This is forbidden, human Miller. Death is the final law of the universe. It is the only thing that is certain. You have broken the most sacred rule of all. Sarah didn't look like a god or a demon. She just looked exhausted. She climbed down from the table, her knees nearly buckling as her own adrenaline began to fade. She reached for a towel and wiped the sweat, singed fur, and blue Xilari blood from her face. She began packing her kit with slow, methodical movements. She put the empty adrenaline syringe back into its case. She coiled the wires of the defibrillator. She didn't look like someone who had just performed a miracle. She looked like a plumber who had just finished fixing a particularly difficult leak. She looked at the trembling chief surgeon and shrugged. On Earth, we have a saying, she said, her voice dry and raspy. It's not over until the paperwork is done. Your captain wasn't gone. He was just stuck. His heart forgot what it was supposed to do, so I reminded it. It's not a crime to remind someone to do their job. But the silence, the surgeon cried out. The song of passing had already begun? The universe had accepted his soul. Then the universe can wait its turn. Sarah snapped, clicking her medical bag shut with a definitive clack. Look, I know your culture sees death as this beautiful, poetic transition, and that's fine. But humans, we're different. We evolved on a planet where everything, the weather, the animals, even the plants, was trying to kill us every single day. We didn't survive by being polite to the afterlife. We survived by being the most stubborn, annoying species in the galaxy. She walked over to the captain, who was now breathing steadily, though his eyes were still wide with confusion. She patted his shoulder, the same shoulder she had just been pounding on minutes ago. Go back to sleep, Captain, she whispered. You've had a long day. I'll bring you the bill for those 20 credits when you wake up for real. The aftermath, a galaxy transformed. Word of what happened on the ages spread through the Galactic Council faster than a jump drive. At first, the other species didn't believe it. They thought the Xilari were exaggerating. They thought it was a mistranslation. The humans use lightning to wake the dead, the council members asked. They break the bones of their friends to keep them breathing. This is madness. This is barbaric. But then the video logs were released. The galaxy watched in stunned, horrified silence as Sarah Miller, a small, fragile human, assaulted a corpse until it came back to life. They saw her eyes. They didn't see a healer. They saw a warrior who viewed death not as a god, but as a rival commander that she intended to defeat. The Miller Protocol became a subject of intense debate. Some alien religions called for humans to be banned from medical practice entirely. They argued that humans were death cheaters who disturbed the natural balance of the stars. But the soldiers, the pilots, the miners, and the explorers who actually lived in the cold, dangerous parts of space, they felt differently. A month later, a galactic freighter was hit by a solar flare. 3 different species were on board. When the rescue ships arrived, the alien medics began their prayers for the fallen. But the human medics, they arrived with their black boxes, their long needles, and their absolute refusal to say goodbye. They saved 40 lives that day, 40 lives that every other species had already given up on. The new reality, the galaxy learned a terrifying and beautiful truth that year. If you want a peaceful passing, if you want your soul to drift away on a bed of soft music and incense, stay away from humans. Don't let a human anywhere near your body if you're ready to go, because to a human medic, the finality of death is just a suggestion. It's a challenge. It's a no that they are more than happy to ignore. Humans are the only species that looks at the Grim Reaper and tells him to wait in the lobby. The chief surgeon of the Aegis eventually wrote a book about his experience. He didn't call it a medical journal. He titled it The Species That Refused to Listen. In the final chapter, he wrote a warning that is now taught in every medical academy in the galaxies. Do not mistake human medicine for kindness. It is a violent, desperate struggle. They do not heal you. They drag you back from the dark by your very soul. They will break your ribs to make you breathe. They will burn your skin to make you feel. They will scream at the stars until the stars give you back. They are the only species that treats the end of life as a technical error. And God help the universe if they ever decide to fix it permanently. As for Sarah Miller, she was given a medal by the Xylari government, which she used as a paperweight on her desk. She didn't want the fame. She didn't want to be a legend. She just wanted to make sure that the next time she played poker with the captain, he didn't have an excuse to skip out on the bill. Because in a galaxy full of ancient laws and cosmic balances, there is nothing more powerful than a human with a medical degree and a very, very bad attitude toward losing. The flat line used to be a period at the end of a sentence. Because of the humans, it's now just a comma.